Excellent ad creation. A lot of individuals take a look at an ad and they have a gut reaction to it. They say, I like this or I don't like this. Obviously, this is a pretty bad way to evaluate ads. We want to have some kind of criteria. We want to have some kind of framework around how we're thinking about advertisements. What we like doesn't often translate to what potential patients or customers like. This is a big mistake that a lot of executives make. Oftentimes, as executives, we're probably not in the same income bracket or maybe not coming from the same demographic as some of our patients coming into care. So the way that we think about things is not the way that patients think about things, and that's really important to understand. We want to think through our frameworks in terms of what's working or not working for patients, and we can do that through split testing, but we can also do that through just having a good understanding of what good advertising looks like. So first and foremost, obviously, a good ad grabs attention. We want to get people's attention. We want to get the right people's attention, right? We're not running a cute cat ad because we're not trying to attract people that like cats. We are trying to grab people's attention that has a problem that we can solve from our organizational standpoint, or we have a desire that we can meet and help them with. So grabbing attention, visually arresting imagery, interesting copy, impactful copy, data points that jump out at people, some kind of rhetorical hook. So your imagery, your ad copy, there's a lot that you can do to grab someone's attention. Then it should be memorable. We're not getting in front of people all the time. They're not going to see us constantly. And so we want people to be able to remember our ads. This is why you get into jingles and slogans and things like that. That's part of the value of your logo because you're containing a lot of information in a very little piece of content. And the better that we can do that, the more memorable we are, the more likely it is for people to think of us when they need our services. Relevant and resembling the audience I'm putting together here. So again, we mentioned the cat image again. We're not going to use cat images even if it's grabbing people's attention, but we want it to be relevant to their pain point or their desire, and we want it to look like them. So if most of our patients coming in are working union jobs, they're generally going to look different than individuals coming off of a farm job or individuals coming from a white office or a white collar environment. These ads that we create should look like our patients because that's going to connect with them. They're like, oh yeah, that looks like me. This is the right place for me. A big mistake we see a lot of the time is a lot of people are pulling stock images and using those in their advertisements. Now, of course, stock images are what a lot of advertising campaigns are going to use, and that's fine as long as the image resembles the patient. So if you are a Medicaid provider, you probably should not be showing images of a family in a really expensive house, sitting around their TV with their dog in their lap. That is generally not going to connect with someone coming from a different demographic. And a lot of stock imagery tends to be white, middle class. We're trying to reach different patient populations for different service providers. We want to make sure our imagery matches and resembles our patients. It's also about the way that they talk, the way that they think. If we're going to use ain't in a campaign, that's going to be appropriate for certain demographics, and it's going to be not appropriate for other demographics. By the same token, if we're doing advertising for B2B to other professionals, we're going to use a lot of industry jargon where we won't use a lot of industry jargon when we're going to direct to consumer advertising. So we have to think about how both our images and our ad copy resemble the patients as much as possible. Speaking to audience pain points, I've mentioned this in a couple other trainings. It's really important to focus on the pain if that's what you're solving. So many organizations that we talk to, and this goes back to the idea of what we think we want versus what works, can be different. So a lot of executives, when we first start working with them, will say, we want to be aspirational. We want to show happy people. We want to show people that they're solving their problems. And there's a part of advertising that has to be this component. We obviously want to show people the result that they can get from utilizing our services, but it doesn't speak to them if that's not where they are as an individual. If I am looking for an orthopedic surgery, I'm in a lot of pain. Maybe I have a lot of knee pain. I'm really frustrated by the fact that I can't walk. I can't play with my grandkids. I can't go play pickleball. These are the frustrations in my life. Seeing someone happy, doesn't speak to me because it doesn't seem like you understand what my problem is. You should always start with the pain. A lot of pharma advertisements do a pretty good job of this. So I think of this eczema ad I see all the time where they show images of people with like inflamed skin or scaly skin, or sometimes they'll show images of people with like metal locked around their arms so they can't move them. This is showing the pain. Now, once we've shown the pain, we don't stop there. That's not what we want to do. We want to say, look, we understand your pain. Here's our solution. And then here's what it'll look like once you've used our services to help you achieve your goals or be free from pain or whatever the information is. That's the best way to do it. So in the marketing world, internally with my team, we say moving from the hell to the heaven. We have to show them hell first before we can show them what heaven looks like, because that's what's going to connect with them. That's real for them. And it shows them that we're trying to solve what's important to them. So you have to make that distinction between aspirational and what I often call happy frappy imagery and what patients is, or what's really important to the patient. You should have a clear call to action. This seems a little silly sometimes. Do we really have to tell people to click the learn more button or call now or fill out a form? And the answer is that yes. We've split tested the heck out of this, as has many agencies over the decades. And everyone has found that telling people what to do next is the best way to get them to do that thing. Remember, marketing is about building trust at scale to get people to take a desired action. If we don't tell them what that desired action is, it can lead to confusion. How do I contact these people? Should I start a chat? Should I fill out an online form? Should I call them? Like, what's the best way for me to get what I want from this organization? We just tell them. And there's also an unconscious component to this. People get into a flow state, and we're engaging with an ad. We're kind of moving through the ad copy, looking at the imagery, and then I just want to know what to do next. I don't want to have to think about it, because if I have to stop and think, now we're breaking that train of thought. Now, they were probably on Facebook already in the first place, right? Where they were staring at their phone and they peeked up at the TV because they heard something interesting. But once we break that focus, then they're like, oh, they're just going to go back to doom scrolling on Facebook, or they're going to go back to staring at their phone until their TV show comes back on. We don't want to break them out of the flow state, because that will increase the opportunity that they're going to go back to doing what they were doing. Again, most people don't spend their days intentionally wanting to engage with advertisements. Everything we do in advertising is about building trust. So we'll always drive this point home. Build trust, build trust, build trust. That's how we convince people to take action, so that they're confident. We're reducing their uncertainty. We're making them confident that we can solve the problem, meet their need, help them achieve their desires. Always about building trust. So a good ad should be building trust at all times. Also, remember, most people are not engaging with their ads. 99% of people that see your ad copy are not going to engage with it. So how do you build some trust with the brief glimpses that people are having? We know that they're not going to watch the full video. We know that they're probably not going to go to the landing page. Even if they click through to the landing page, they're probably going to skim it. They're not going to read everything on there. So we want to think about how our kind of hook messaging, how our headlines, which is one thing that they'll almost all read, and how our imagery communicates and sends a message of building trust that we can solve their problems, meet their needs, help them achieve their desires. That should come across in the short form as well. A real easy example of this is something that we always tell our internal teams is, if we have a landing page with different subheadings for different sections, anywhere from 50 to 80% of people will skim the content. So we should be able to communicate our message in the long form if they read everything. We should also be able to communicate the core of the message just using the headlines. So if you scan that content and just read the 4 to 5 headlines in the section, you should get a strong sense of what that piece of content is about and work through that hell to heaven sequence. If you've got your headlines right, your headlines tell the story well, not as perfect as the whole thing, but well, and that is going to have an impact. So you think the same way in your ads. Does my ad communicate the message? If they just see the headline, maybe just read the first sentence and see the image. Am I getting the message across? because they're going to see that message again and again and again, even though they don't engage with it. And that's important. So always thinking about building trust at all the levels of the advertising campaign. How do we build trust? This is something that we've covered in other sections, so I will repeat it here, or you can skip ahead if you've already been through that module. Frequency builds trust. I get comfortable with organizations I know, people I've seen, right? If I've seen someone 50 times, I'm like, oh, I know that person. At the very least, that person's not going to attack me, right? In a very basic human psychology level. As I see them more, I become more familiar with them. I'm like, oh, I know that person. They're not violent. They're not crazy. Advertising is working on the same level, where the more you see an organization, the more you're like, oh yeah, they do that thing. So they must do it well, because I keep seeing them. I've never heard anything bad about them, even though I keep seeing their advertisements all the time. So they must be pretty good. Frequency builds trust as a very, very basic component of your strategy for marketing campaigns. Testimonials and reviews are obviously amazing ways to build trust. Seeing people that look like them, seeing people that have been through the same thing. Hey, I had that problem too. And the way they're talking about that problem is exactly how I feel about it. And that provider solved it for them. So if they can solve it for someone who's like me, they can probably solve it for me. Reviews do the same thing. So testimonials and reviews are fabulous ways to incorporate content into your ads that build trust. Accreditation helps. If you've got accreditation through some kind of national body, the more recognized it is by the patient population, the better. But also remember, a lot of your marketing should be going to B2B professional referrals. And the professional community is much more likely to recognize accreditation. And so in your B2B marketing to other community referral partners, the accreditation can be an important component, especially if your competitors don't have it. Now, again, with all of this, if your competitors have it, that diminishes the advantage for you. So if all of your competitors are accredited, then you'll have it on the website, but you're not going to emphasize it because it's not a differentiator. Third-party accolades, the more information you can get from maybe an outside news agency, or someone did a story on you, or you partnered with another related adjacent healthcare provider and they said good things about you. All these third-party accolades are really valuable in building trust. Showcase your expertise. Show your staff. Have patients talking about you, show before and after images of life before your services and life after your services. How are you helping patients? You want your results to be demonstrable as much as possible. When you demonstrate the results, it's, hey, look, this is what they look like before, this is what they look like now, or here's what their life was like before, here's what their life was like, or here's what their life is like now. That goes a long way because it's real for people. And it reduces their uncertainty. You've clearly done this before, so you can probably do it for me. Expertise is another way to do that. If I can have a really good explanation for people in an ad, on a landing page, that expertise shines through, and that's a way to demonstrate the fact that you know your stuff and you know how to help people like them. Harder to do in healthcare, but we can reduce or offset risk. How do we mitigate risk? By maybe providing guarantees. Maybe there's some kind of introductory offer. Maybe we can have them come in for a low-cost service and do well with that low-cost service, which then increases their trust, so that when we provide the high-cost service, they are much more willing to trust us and make that investment. Any way that we can reduce or mitigate the cost risk or the time risk for potential patients is a really valuable way to connect them to our care. Split testing is a big part of creating excellent ads. And there's lots of different levels of split tests that you should have. So audiences is number one. Hopefully you know who your audience is, but not always. And we might say, okay, we think that our audience is individuals aged 18 to 60, right? We're saying it's almost everybody. But can we niche down, especially if you're a smaller organization? Can we say maybe we target just women? And women are a better focus for us based on our skill sets or based on community needs, and tying those two pieces together. Maybe it's not just women, but it's women with children. Maybe it's women with children who live in this zip code, right? We can keep getting narrower and narrower and niching down, and we should split test that. You can do all of that demographic targeting on the back end of most digital platforms. And so the better you get at that, the better results that you have. Also remember, as we narrow our focus, it reduces our marketing spend because it's a smaller audience. It's less people that we're trying to reach, but there's a bigger cumulative impact. So if we think of just targeting a small community of, let's say, women with children who are realtors, that's a pretty small audience. I can guarantee you that all the female realtors in a particular area know each other. And so if we help one of them, they're going to talk to the other person. Versus if we're just targeting all women in a community, do all women in a community talk to each other? Absolutely not. So we don't get the cumulative advantage of having a really focused, targeted spend when we broaden the audiences out. That's the value of niching down. You're spending less, but you get a better cumulative impact through that community knowing each other, being tighter knit, and communicating with each other more about particular needs that they have. So split test your audiences, try different audiences, see what works. Images, obviously, are you using illustrations? Are you using images? Are you using stock photos? Are you using photos from a photographer? Are you using photos of images with people in them, or just images of the building? You can split test the heck out of everything, and you should. The more you split test, generally, the better you get an idea over time of what works or doesn't work for your organization in terms of getting people to take a desired action. Messaging is obviously critical, often more so than the imagery. What is appealing to people? What are their major pain points? What are the major desires? Once we've identified major pain points or desires, what language are we using within that, or what elements of it are we focusing on? So let's go back to our individual looking for a knee surgery. What's important to him? Is it getting back to the pickleball? Is it playing with the grandkids? Is it freedom from pain? We might not be sure. We might not have an idea. So we want to split test all of those messages and see which ones resonate better with people. Landing pages are an important component of all your ad campaigns. Obviously, most of the time you're sending them somewhere. It's very rare that you're running a call now campaign, because those are generally the least effective campaigns. You want to get them to the website and then give them more information about you, kind of get them pulled into who you are, what you do well, and then get them to call you or fill out the form or start the chat or whatever the situation is. So landing pages are critical, and you can test everything on landing pages just like you can on the ads. Test the images, test the messaging, test where you put certain images, where you put the messaging, where you put your call to actions, the color of your call to action buttons. There's a million things you can split test on a landing page. Offers is one we often don't think about in healthcare. Outside of the dental world, dental often has a lot of offers that come in for a free teeth whitening or come in for a free checkup. You see these offers all the time. So split test your offers if you can, if that makes sense, and if there's no compliance issues for your particular healthcare service line. See what you can do to get people in the door. Your offer is an important component for that. Obviously, split test your products and services. What makes sense? So the dental example is a really good one. You can think about what's your entry point into care that makes the most sense. Do we just want to advertise average checkup and cleaning services? Is that really going to work for people? Or would it be smarter to advertise teeth whitening? And we just focus on teeth whitening. We get people in for that. And then internally, we sell up, we upsell and say, well, obviously this worked really well for you. I'm glad we got to meet. I'm glad you were happy with our care. Why don't you think about using us for your regular cleaning services and your regular checkups throughout the year? So you can build patients in by choosing your service or your product at the front door, and then upselling the other services that are maybe harder to do from a marketing standpoint. Very, very smart way to do it. Hospitals, also you're thinking about profitability in your service lines. Do we want to market our ER? Is that a good entry point for us? Or are we just losing a lot of money on that entry point and we're not seeing a lot of people come in for follow-up care? Versus if we market directly for cancer treatment or cardiology or orthopedic services, maybe these are high margin services for us and we want to focus our advertising dollars on that service line versus something that's maybe lower margin that's not leading to a lot of revenue driving patients. We want to be smart about what we're advertising. And you can split test your channels, obviously. So maybe we're thinking that Facebook versus TikTok, we don't know which one's better. We think they're kind of comparable. Just split test them. Throw $5,000 a month on both of them, run it for 3 months and see which one performs better. So if my budget's only $10,000 a month, then it might make sense to run the split test first and go all in on the channel that's working better, especially if you're a smaller organization. You want to really double down on the channels that are most effective for you. thinking through strategy in terms of ad creation, there's a couple components that we obviously want to understand. Hopefully everyone's familiar with the basic marketing approach where you have connect, convince, convert, right? From a really simple funnel standpoint or decision-making standpoint, this is how most marketing works. Sometimes people call the connect component awareness, which is why I have that on here. But we have to get people to know who we are first. Then once they know us, we've got to convince them why they should choose us versus the other 30 competitors in the marketplace. Once we've convinced them, then we want them to pick up the phone and take action. So there's always those 3 basic stages for any marketing campaign. And there's different ways to do that. In that convince stage, and really through all the stages, but the convince stage is the most important, we want to have differentiation in there. So always emphasizing this, what sets you apart from your competitors? If all of your competitors provide teeth whitening services, then that is not a good differentiator. But maybe you're the only dental organization or dentist that provides free teeth whitening services as an entry point into care. So you can make something that is a commonality, a competitive advantage if you do it differently, if you do it better, if you do it in a way that's more appealing to patients. So let's always think about what is everyone else doing and how can we do it different. And again, different doesn't have to mean better. Quality is obviously a differentiator, but there are lots of other differentiators such as cost, such as speed, such as expertise in serving a particular demographic of individuals. We always want to go back to building brand, building reputation. That component I mentioned that 99% of people are not going to action on an ad that they see. So with our image that we have, with the amount of copy that they see, maybe just the headline, what information are we getting across with just that headline and just the image, the 2 things that jump out to most people that they'll see even if they're skipping through or scrolling past an ad. We want to be able to build trust with the smallest amount of information possible. And then as people get pulled into our campaigns, the people that engage are more likely to convert for us. And so that's good. We want to continue to build the trust through the subsequent expansion of the content. So we've got a little bit of trust building that happens with the headline and the image. And then we've got more trust building that happens as they read the ad. And then if they click through to the landing page, now we've got even more trust building that we're doing. We're always thinking about it from this trust and reputation process. How do we build a reputation in our community for being differentiated and being the right choice for them for a particular service line, and communicating that in little amounts of information as well as larger amounts of information. Patient journey mapping is an important part for all of this. When I am not aware of services, then that's a different message from I'm aware of your services, but I don't understand how you're different. That's a different message. Then I'm aware of your services, I understand how you're different, but I'm not sure that now is the right time. Or I'm not sure that I do want to move forward with this particular service, especially if it's a voluntary service. So mapping that patient journey is important because we have to create different images, different ad copy, or maybe even using different channels and different channel strategies based on where they are in the patient journey. Always, always, always integrate your business to business and your business to consumer components. Again, one of the biggest mistakes that I see consistently from healthcare organizations is that the outreach team over here is completely independent and not supported by the mainline advertising team here, especially from a digital perspective. But whether we're talking about traditional or digital, there should be some kind of business to business marketing campaigns that are going out that supports the outreach team so that business to business is not 100% dependent on just the individuals talking to people, giving them calls, sending emails. If we can get a LinkedIn campaign going, if we've got campaigns on ZocDoc or WebMD, or even if we've got email support and regular newsletters coming from the marketing team, that could be a huge advantage to the B2B outreach team. So make sure that those 2 components are integrated all the time. What data are we using to determine success for a particular ad? It's actually a pretty tough question. So as we've gone through the different channel strategies, you've seen that different channels have different success metrics. A bottom of funnel channel like SEO or Google Ads is going to have a different success metric than a display channel like Facebook or TV. So So in general, obviously, we're always looking at cost per qualified inquiry. That is our success metric for most of our marketing. But again, remember, depending on the channel here and where we're running these ads, it might be qualified inquiry lift over time, not directly attributable or what we call final attribution for the particular channel. CPM is always a really good way to compare apples to apples. How much are we paying to reach 1,000 people? Is it cheaper on Facebook versus Google Ads? Now, again, remember, intent is an important part of this. On Google Ads, we've got a really high intent audience. So we're willing to pay a higher CPM for that audience. You'll see the same thing actually if you run the back ends of like a Facebook or a TikTok or an X campaign. As you narrow your audience, these platforms start to charge you more and more because they consider that audience to be more valuable for you the narrower it is. The reality is also it's higher competition. So the narrower you are, generally your competitors are doing the same thing. And so if you have 100 people competing for an audience of 1,000 versus 100 people competing for an audience of 1,000,000, they're going to charge you more for the group of people, same size of competitors, targeting a smaller audience. Cost per click is good for a lot of ad campaigns. It gives us a really solid metric. Now, it does depend on the objective. An objective where you're running a video ad versus an awareness ad versus a conversion ad is going to get you different success metrics because the platforms target for you. If you pick, I want people to convert or click to the website, then the platform is going to try to narrow your audiences and show your campaigns to people that are more likely to click. So you get a different click-through rate on each objective. We always want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, and that's one of the challenges with any kind of marketing. Depending on timing, depending on audiences, depending on campaign objective, all of this can affect our success metrics. It's one of the reasons that I like CPM a lot because our CPM actually gives us levels the playing field a little bit more. If I'm looking at CPM for audience campaigns that are just focused on awareness versus conversion versus video, I can get a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison of what our actual costs are to reach those individuals. Cost per video view is a data point that we can get for obviously YouTube ads, for TikTok ads, Facebook and Instagram. Most channels have video views as an option. And so it's a good metric to use to start understanding the success of certain campaigns. If I'm running a video campaign, I do want to see what the video watch rates are. I do want to see how many people are watching the first 10 seconds versus completing the entire video. That's valuable for me. And again, at the end of the day, we're looking at qualified inquiry lift. It might take 3 months for us to get people through a decision-making cycle, depending on their conversion windows, depending on how much money we're spending, depending on the time of the year, and if it's the right time where people make purchase decisions for this particular service line. All of these factors are going to affect our qualified inquiry cost. And so we want to look at it generally on a 3-month window. Every quarter is a really, really good way to assess if our campaigns are having a positive impact overall. There are a lot of different tactics within ad creation that we want to think about. One I mentioned already was niching down versus market domination. So if I'm niching down, and this is really good for smaller organizations or big organizations that are maybe expanding through service line expansion to target different demographics, how can I get really focused on our patients? And again, it's easier for a smaller organization. Let's say that you already have, let's say we're a dentist and it's a very saturated market. And so we're all competing for the same patients. But if I, as an individual, identify within the LGBTQ community, and so I want to provide services for that community in a way that's very inviting for individuals from that community, then I can target just them. And as we talked about, there's all these advantages. We're spending less, it's more focused spend. The community, because it's smaller, they're more likely to know each other and refer and have positive word of mouth. And so I can start small and really work within that demographic. Or a really common one within dental practices is dentists who specialize in treating patients while they're sleeping. So that is something that not a lot of dentists do. There obviously is a small demographic of people that are terrified of the dentist and will not go unless they're put to sleep. And so for those individuals, we can target just that community, and that's going to allow us to have strong efficacy. Versus if we're a larger organization, let's say we're a DSO and we've got a bunch of clinics across the city or across the state, we're not going to niche down. Instead, we're going to look for market domination. So we want to get our advertising out there as much as possible and make sure that we're seen by everybody because we need the volume. We couldn't survive off of just marketing to a particular demographic. We need men, we need women, we need older individuals, we need younger individuals, because we have a lot of patient volume that we need to fill. So then we're going for market dominance, which is a different strategy. Funnels, just so that we understand them. Again, we can't do a lot of funnel marketing within healthcare because of HIPAA compliance and privacy rules, but just so that we understand it. A normal funnel, let's take e-commerce as an example. I'm trying to grab people's attention and make them aware of a certain product, and that product, because of the imagery, because of the copy, it says, oh yeah, I need that product, or that would be useful for me. I grab their attention. They click on the ad, go to the website. Now we've cookie tagged them. And so through the cookie tagging, we can run what's called retargeting. We build a specific audience of just people who have clicked on the website or clicked from that particular campaign. We can get pretty specific with it. We know that these people have already been to the website and are already interested in the product. So now we can create specific campaigns when we do our retargeting that convince them that this is the right product for them and that ours is better than the competitors. So that's a very specific message. Then we get another cookie tag. And again, we can create specific messaging going to this yet smaller audience who has now clicked through our ads twice. They've seen the awareness ads. They've seen the convince ads. And now we're just running a conversion ad. Why don't you buy now? Now is a great time for our product or our service to help you solve your problem, to meet your desire. Here's a great opportunity. Then we might even take it a step further and get people that didn't act on that buy now section and send them a discount and say, oh, hey, maybe last week wasn't the right time. How about this week and you'll get free shipping or you get 10% off, right? So there's all these different stages within the funnel that you can do with cookie tagging, retargeting, all of your pixel data that unfortunately as a healthcare provider, we don't have the ability to do. But we want to think about our marketing in the same way because our patients are still going through that decision-making cycle. They're still having a journey where they become aware of us. Then we have to convince them that we're the best fit for them. And then we have to get them to actually pick up the phone and schedule an assessment or become a patient. So one way to do that is sequencing. Because we can't retarget and actually pull out the audiences, what we're doing is we're taking our target market, which is the audiences that we've built, and just pushing out our ad campaigns to every individual within our target market. But we'll sequence it. So let's say that we're a brand new provider that's never marketed before. This is really easy. We market awareness first. And we'll spend a whole month marketing awareness and making sure that we get a solid frequency of 3 to 4 hits per week to make sure that everyone in our target audience is aware of us. And then month 2, we will move to a convince marketing message. And then month 3, we'll move to a convert marketing message. So even though we couldn't narrow the audience down and use cookie tagging and all the fun digital tools that are available to other verticals, we can do it from a sequencing standpoint. Now, for most organizations, you're not brand new. For most organizations, you probably don't want to just run in month-long cycle windows. You want to reach all the people all the time, and that's smart for most healthcare organizations. You're just going to run your awareness campaigns, your convince campaigns, and your conversion campaigns at the same time. And are people going to see campaigns out of sequence? Yes, absolutely. But we all see ads all the time that aren't the right fit for us, aren't the right time for us. People are used to that. It's not going to have a negative impact. And we're still going to get each ad in the sequence in front of the people we want to get it in front of on a regular basis if we're doing things right in terms of audience targeting, budgeting, messaging. So we just want to think that there should be a sequence in place, even if we're not necessarily running it as an actual sequence. Bully bidding goes back to market domination, is a really good opportunity there. Again, these are all auction systems. And so if you tell Google or Facebook or X that you're willing to pay more than the competitors, they're going to show your ads more. And so you get more at-bats. You get more opportunities to get in front of a patient that may lead to an inquiry. Now, also remember, not only are you getting more at-bats, but your competitors are getting less at-bats because their ads aren't showing up to the same degree that yours are. So it actually has a dual positive impact for you where, look, we're willing to spend a little bit more, so we get more at-bats and our competitors get less, and that's going to have a cumulative effect over time. So very, very worthwhile to look at bully bidding as a potential strategy for your organization. Sales follow-up is something that's really important. It's a tactic that a lot of organizations forget about or tend to ignore. They tend to be overly reliant on the marketing to do the heavy lifting. And that's usually not a great idea. The marketing should be working hand in hand with follow-up. So if an individual calls you for services and they don't schedule an assessment or they don't schedule an appointment that day, there's clearly a pretty high level of interest or need for your services. That's why they went so far as to pick up the phone. If they don't call back, call them back. Your sales team, your front office administrators, whoever handles your calls should 100% have a follow-up process in place where they place follow-up calls, they send follow-up emails, they send follow-up texts. And you can automate the texts, you can automate the emails, and so you don't even have to have a lot of labor costs behind it. You need some kind of follow-up because a lot of organizations just lose patience because they paid all this money on the marketing, they got the call originally, and then nobody followed up. And think about it, most patients are calling multiple providers. So if you've got 3 different organizations that were called by a patient, 2 of them have no follow-up, and the third one follows up, who do you think the patient's going to go to? They're going to go to the provider that followed up, most likely, because they'll say, oh, these other 2 providers don't seem to care that much, or they don't seem to have an interest, or they just weren't staying top of mind. And so the provider that called gets the patient. That follow-up process is really, really important to make sure that you're ensuring new patients coming into your facility with all those marketing dollars that you already paid. What's the psychology for individuals for ad campaigns? We think about what a good ad is. That really connects to the psychological component of what works or what doesn't work. So again, mapping the patient journey. If I'm not aware of you, that messaging is very different from if I'm aware of you, I understand how you're different, and now you just want me to pick up the phone. I have to understand the psychology of not just the individual overall, but where they are in their decision-making process, because that is going to change the type of ad campaigns that we're running or that we want to get in front of these individuals. So their stage in the decision-making journey is really critical for understanding the psychology, and that creates a good ad. Pain points are huge. Make sure you understand the pain points. Again, there can be multiple pain points. Is it about how someone looks? Is it about their self-confidence? Maybe when they're looking at an example of a cosmetic procedure. Is it about finding a partner in life? Maybe they're looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that's really important to them for their pain point. Maybe they're not feeling confident at work because of a cosmetic issue. There could be lots of different pain points for individuals. Same thing with the pain. There's physical pain, but there's obviously things that are restricted in their life because of that pain. So do we want to solve that pain point, like the grandfather that wants to play with his grandchildren? Which is it? The physical pain? Is it the playing with the grandchildren? Is it both? We want to understand what moves the needle for people, and we can do that through split testing as well as obviously talking to our patients. Your goals and desires should connect to that pain point. So really good advertisement, again, moves people from the hell to the heaven. You see this in a lot of pharma advertisements. They tend to do a really good job with it. All of the marketing that we use, especially when there's a pain point to be solved, we show the hell, then we show our client solution, and then we show the outcome of what that looks like for the patient. And that very simple journey is critical to good advertising. Comparing, contrasting competitors, always from a psychological standpoint, we want to reduce uncertainty. Do I know I'm making the right choice as a potential patient? And I learn that by learning what's different about you or what you do well or what you do better. That helps me be confident that I'm making the right choice in this sea of uncertainty. Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. There's 30 different providers I could choose from. How do I know which one I should go to? Differentiation is key in your advertising cycle, and you can do that by comparing and contrasting. You don't have to mention competitor names. You don't have to say, hey, provider X over here does this and we do this. You can simply say, here's what we do better than others. This resemblance component is really important. Do the people in the advertisements look like your patients? Because if they don't, then the patients are going to think that this provider is not for them. We even have clients that just serve maybe lower income audiences, but for whatever reason have really nice facilities. Maybe they invested a lot in the rebuild, the construction costs for the facility. Maybe they just spent a lot of time and said, you know what, we're going to put forth this effort and make sure that everything's fixed and the walls look really nice and we have lots of lighting and lots of natural lighting, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you can show an image of that and the patient will say, oh, actually that place isn't for me. That looks like one of those fancy uptown locations. And so they wouldn't be able to take my insurance, or they wouldn't have price points that make sense for us, or I just wouldn't feel comfortable there. So you have to think about that stuff and you have to message it appropriately. So we have clients that do have really, really nice offices or facilities in areas that service primarily Medicaid. And so we have to communicate that, say, hey, look, we provide really high level care and services that you would get anywhere else because we believe in treating all patients the same and everyone deserves quality care, and we'll do it at an affordable price. Or we'll do it for individuals that are also on Medicaid. Having that very clear communication lets them know that, hey, this place is for me. And you then should have imagery of people that look like them in your space. So this is a really good example of where an empty facility would not be as good as bringing people in and getting pictures taken. Maybe you're paying actors for that. Maybe you're getting waivers and asking patients to sit in where you use them in your advertising. Either way works. One thing that's important to mention from a psychology standpoint is you should have resemblance across campaigns as much as possible. And this is where brand consistency comes in. When we think of our colors, our fonts, our tone, this is actually part of it. So we go back to that flow state. If I see the image in an ad matches the image on a landing page, that builds trust. It lets me know I'm in the right place, but also does it somewhat unconsciously. Right? So again, I'm just flowing through this advertisement. I'm like, okay, yep, this makes sense, this makes sense. And then suddenly I click to the landing page and there's a completely different image than the one I saw. And it just jolts me out of, the flow state where I was just working through the advertising campaign. Now I'm stopping and thinking like, oh, wait, what am I doing? I was trying to look up, something to research for dinner. And so I'm going to go back to doing that. Or I was looking for, what my granddaughter was up to. And so I'm going to go back to Facebook and check that out. The second you break them out of their flow state, you just have this increased probability that they are going to no longer engage with the advertising sequence and campaign that you've got set up. So really important to be thinking through that. Doesn't mean that you need the exact same image, between ad and between landing page. That's not what I'm saying here, though that is valuable. That does help. But there needs to be consistency in the brand colors, in the tone, in the relation of the images to the landing page, right? There should be some kind of continuity, and that's going to help patients stay in that flow state. So going through the FAQs, some common questions that come up. Should we focus on video ads? This comes up because everyone hears that video ads are better these days or video ads are popular. It completely depends on your campaign objective. It depends on the stage of the patient journey. It depends on the platform that you're using. If you're using YouTube as a primary advertising channel, absolutely. You should definitely be using video ads. If you're not using YouTube, if you're using Facebook, how many people use Facebook to watch videos? Some do, some don't. But a lot of people are just scrolling through Facebook. They want to see what's going on with family and friends. And so having an image with ad copy usually works really, really well on Facebook. And so we don't need video there. We also want to think about the level of engagement. Again, the patient journey. I've never heard of your organization before. You're running an awareness campaign. Am I really going to give you 2 minutes of my time to watch a video? Maybe, maybe not. But am I going to give you 10 seconds of my time where all I have to do is see an image and read a little bit of ad copy? Might be willing to do that. So that patient journey component is just as important. And it's also about your internal capabilities. Do you have the ability to create good video content on a regular basis? Yes or no? So lots of factors to think about. But that's the main point, is there's lots of factors. There's no black or white answer to should we focus on video ads. What messaging converts the best? Again, high variability here. You should really know what's important to your patients. If you don't, talk to them, run split tests, get a sense for that. But your core message should be pretty clear. Then you're working on the periphery in terms of changing up the words, changing up the way that you say things, changing your messaging and these little tweaks is just going to have incremental value. If you're converting at 1% for your click-through rate, you're maybe going to get a 1.2% or a 1.3% click-through rate by messing with periphery, right? You're not going to have these massive gains. The important thing is to get the core message right, and then incremental value is incremental value. There's diminishing returns to this. How much do we want to keep investing in it over time? It's a big question mark. Are we getting value versus the time put in, the money put in for the split test? Then keep going with it. But as long as you get the core message right, that's the most important thing. What channel should we place ads on? Go through all of the channel trainings that we have throughout this program, and that will give you a much better sense of what channels you should be on and ideas. Bottom line, be on the channels where your audience is. So if your audience is there, you should be on that channel because that's where you get in front of the people who are most likely to become patients. How long should we run a split test for? This is a question that I get asked a lot. And it really depends on two things. It depends on the standard conversion making or decision making window for the patient, as well as related to the patient journey. So if we look at bottom of funnel marketing for like a Google Ads campaign, oftentimes the decision making window is same day to maybe 72 hours. So if that's our standard decision making window, then I need to be running split tests that are looking at that window. Now, for a Facebook campaign, let's say we're trying to get a direct response out of individuals, and we know that a lot of people in our particular service line have a 7 to a 14-day decision-making window. Well, then I know I need to run at least 28 days for a split test to get results, because I want to have a sense of what's working in the first 14-day window. I want to see if that continues into the second 14-day window. But I have to have the amount of time that makes sense based on the conversion window for our patients on average, also related to the channel that we're using. Now, the second piece is the amount of data that we're pushing through the campaigns. So ideally, in the perfect world, we've got 100 conversions, and that gives us statistical significance. And so we're able to take 2 campaigns and get 100 conversions. But let's say that I'm paying $100 per conversion. So if I'm going to wait for 100 conversions, that means I'm going to pay $10,000, and I need to do at least 2 different tests in a split test. So I'm going to pay $20,000 to run a split test. That's a pretty tall order. So in that situation, we're going to say, hey, we're not going to get super statistical significance here. We are going to accept sampling, and we're going to say that, hey, conversion number of 10, we can extrapolate and assume that that's representative or representative enough. And so we need 10 conversions. Well, I'm still paying $100 a conversion. So that's going to cost me $1,000 for test A and $1,000 for test B. So I have to spend a minimum of $2,000 just to get enough data through the system. When you think about it that way, you have a better sense of your budgets and your costs. And is it even worth doing a lot of split tests? Again, if I've got the messaging right, and we know our core messaging is good, I know I'm going to get diminishing returns by just playing with the language a little bit. Is it worth it to spend $2,000 every single split test? Maybe it is for you, maybe it's not. Most of the time, once you get your core audience, your core messaging, you're on the right platforms, you're marketing at the right times, then you're not as worried about doing a lot of split testing. How many split tests should we run? Goes back to that answer that I just gave you around costs, around decision-making windows, around the expected returns. Have we not figured out our messaging? Have we not figured out our audience? Those are critical. We want to spend money to really get that right. If we've got those dialed in, then the diminishing returns factor comes in, and maybe it's not as worth it for us to spend a lot of money on split tests. Like when we run an average Facebook campaign, we'll generally do 50 split tests as a starting point for a new client, because we want to make sure we're honing in on the messaging, honing in on imagery, honing in on audience targeting. And so we have 50 split tests running. But then as we get more familiar with that client and we become very confident in what's working for them, then we're going to narrow that down to 2 to 4 split tests on a regular basis, because we don't want to be wasting a ton of money always running split tests when we've already got the core information that is working accounted for. When will we see results? super high variability here, so I hate to give any kind of recommendations for ad campaigns because it's dependent on what's the objective of the ad campaign, what channels are you using, where are they in the patient journey. All of these are going to have significant impacts. What you want to do is you want to compare apples to apples. If you've got a Google ad campaign running, then you should know what your benchmarks are for your cost per conversion or cost per qualified inquiry on Google Ads, and you want to compare the new ads to the old ads. Really simple. A Facebook ad, same thing. We want to compare Facebook to Facebook, but we also want to make sure we're comparing an awareness campaign to an awareness campaign, a video campaign to a video campaign. We don't want to compare a video campaign to a conversion campaign because those have different targeting. It's using different elements of the algorithm. We're creating different kinds of content. Timing is also a really important component of this. So seasonality, again, for some providers, summer is not a great time, or the holidays isn't a great time. So we don't want to compare a campaign from December to a campaign in January. Or another example within healthcare is all the deductibles reset in January. So deductibles being reset tends to have an impact on patients converting into care. And so December to January is a bad time frame. It's better to compare January to January, January from last year to January this year, December to last year to December this year. You can see there's just so many confounding variables in terms of really determining what works. But the bottom line is compare apples to apples. And then are you seeing improvement? That should be considered a positive result. And you'll get that based on the amount of data that you're running through the campaigns. So again, I want a minimum of 10. Have we pushed enough money through that? Have we given there enough time that we get our 10 conversions that we can now compare apples to apples? Then we can see if we're getting results, and whatever that time frame is going to be dependent on your channel strategy, going to be dependent on how much money you're spending, dependent on what you did prior years. That will help you determine what's successful or not.